like we all live in a sus submarine.
That is pretty funny. Hey everyone, good afternoon. Where depending on where you are, usually I say good afternoon, good morning. It's morning here on the West Coast. Welcome to Explain Like I'm Five. I am Susan, and with me today, I have a very, very special guest. Hi, Nathaniel.
Hi there.
Hi, honey.
Hey there. I thank you for having me on today on this, I think, most important Saturday of the year, because it's Benny Barkington's birthday.
It is Benny Barkington's birthday.
11 today, which makes him, as far as I know, old enough to be the next president.
11 years old.
In dog years, that's he's 75, which I think is 78, which is Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So we're talking about election stuff.
Yep. We are talking about election stuff today, as if you couldn't tell, because it's the Saturday before the election. So for some of us who, obviously have voted before, but have not maybe understood the entire process.
Yeah,
like exactly how it works, because I think a lot of people don't entirely understand it. So where do we begin?
Well, I am going to finish writing this tweet where I am inviting people to come and listen to me talk about something that's so invigorating that it's not even in most American U.S. government classes.
It's really not.
Or if it is, it's glossed over. Certainly parts of what, let's just say, maybe not a full, 5/5 of what I'm going to talk about is included in U.S. history or government classes, or do they take civics anywhere in the United States still? I don't know.
Nah, when I was in high school, but that was 15 years ago.
I had to take statistics. That was a thing that I took in high school.
I didn't have to take it, but I did take it. I failed it, which, is probably pretty obvious.
Let's see. Let me finish writing this.
Well,
all right.
Sip my coffee.
So, the United States of America.
Yes.
We, if you don't know, vote. Usually not very well. We're usually, as far as representative democracies go, or democracies at all, or because if anybody watches this and is like, but we're a constitutional. Yeah, okay, cool. I realize.
We get it.
Yeah, I'm aware of what that is. Yeah. But we vote very poorly, in fact, in our turnout numbers, especially recently. It hasn't always been the case, but especially recently, we have voted very poorly, and that is in terms of people who are eligible to vote, as well as people who are registered to vote. It's not just eligible, but also registered to vote, which is a newer concept, and that actually head to the polls. The percentages are not very high, especially in what we consider midterm elections, which are basically not elections for the president. But how did we get here? Is a
very good question.
Yeah, it's a long, winding road that includes a lot of bad decisions. But here we are, and of course, there is also the question of, is this the right way? Or some people might even go as far as to say this is the way. It's a Mandalorian reference. So back in the framing of the Constitution, we had this after the Articles of Confederation, right? We decided, hey, maybe we need a more representative democracy. We need something that's actually, newish. The Constitution is not unique, and it's not new necessarily. It's framed after what we have in Britain and in England. So it's not like, I like people say it's the most unique document. No, it's not. It's really not. Very, very close to what we have in the in English Parliament, especially when you consider the House of Burgesses and stuff like that. It's almost not quite, but yes, it's almost like the House of Representatives seems like the House of Burgesses. Who knows? And what we get is we have the father of the United States Constitution, James Madison. And James Madison is talking to all of the states. And we have this thing what's known as the Connecticut Compromise. All right. And of course, Connecticut is a tiny little state. Even back then, it's always been a tiny little state.
It's always been tiny.
And also right next to it, Rhode Island.
So even tinier.
They are not excited with the prospect of having a lack of representation in Congress because they're tiny little states. They're like, look, we didn't choose this, you did.
Yeah, this is all your fault.
And so what they end up doing is they have what's known as a Connecticut. Well, there's a Virginia Compromise, but the Connecticut Compromise or the Great Compromise is the more important one in this. Here's what they say. They say we're going to have 2 houses of Congress, right? We'd already kind of figured out we're going to have like legislative, executive, and then judicial, which apparently means nothing today. But we have the how are we going to take care of the legislative branch, and how are we going to have equal representation for small states as well as large states, and states with lower population as well as states that have higher population. So at that point, your states with higher population, you're looking at somewhere like Virginia and Massachusetts.
Right.
Yeah, those are your 2 most heavily populated states. New York at that time wasn't.
No, it really wasn't.
What's funny is that if you consider New York being like almost the centerpiece of the American War of Independence, they didn't even have 100,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was not an enormous. Manhattan was right there, and they had that, but it was really just like that area. You could easily leave New York within, like if you were in a car today, you could just like you drive by New York, like like you're driving, almost like if you're going to like Waco, Texas, you just zoop right through, and there was actually fewer people there.
Wow.
Yeah. And what they said was we are going to do 2 different things. One, we are going to create a larger house, like the upper part of the house, and that is that is going to be determined, and it's called the Senate, and it's going to be based on not on population or not on size, but rather that we are going to give every single state 2 senators. So the smaller states with, or the larger states with, the smaller states with like no population, are like, oh, this is great because now we have the same representation in Congress, in the Senate, which is the upper house. We get to decide, quite obviously, they were going to help decide who's going to go on the Supreme Court, which later on became a lifetime position. And we're going to be able to make those decisions the exact same as Massachusetts and Virginia. And so South Carolina is like, yay, right? Look at us. We still get to do this. And then you had...
I feel like that's still what they're saying these days.
They're saying, I can't wait for less than 100 years, which could have been avoided. And then we have the House of Representatives. And the way that was apportioned is by the population of the states, to which the larger, more populated states said, yay, we get to have a say. Like a say, really that's or where it's like we get to have more of a say because we have more people.
Yeah, it's more indicative of our population.
Yes, it has more diversity, right? And so we get to get the lower house of Congress. This is us. And what they did at that point, then they said, and this comes down into the Virginia Compromise. And then they said, all right, so now we got that taken care of. Let's talk about the presidency. Let's talk about the fact that, sorry, Mr. Hamilton, he can't be a king, which was the thing. I don't know how that didn't make it into the show. And it almost did in a way, but it didn't. And then they said, all right, so the way we're going to elect this is going to be what's known as the Electoral College. The way that was decided was because you have what are known as the governmental elites.
Right.
What they said is the people need to be properly governed, but they are not smart enough to govern themselves. They're not smart enough to make decisions. They don't have enough information. They're almost like low information voters. And so they they don't need to be trusted with this. These are the same people that made various other decisions, and these are the same people that decided it was a good idea to try to guard Manhattan in the American War of Independence and leave their entire flank exposed. So, good job there, Mr. Washington, who had no input in this. And what they said was, in order for this to work, we're going to have them vote, that people will be able to vote, but they're not going to actually vote for the president.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to vote for certain, what they called electors.
Right.
And every single state would have electors based on their population. And so you had, obviously, the states would have more sway in this would be the more populated states.
Mm-hmm.
So again, Virginia, which was home to many, many influential founding fathers, among them George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. These are, when you're talking about, presidents, you're talking like 3 of the first 5 presidents.
Yeah.
And of course, James Madison, the father of the Constitution, the person that actually made or wrote the Bill of Rights, which the Bill of Rights is not in the original Constitution, by the way.
It's what's called amendments.
Yeah, so the freedom of speech and whatnot was added later, and it doesn't matter, by the way, that it's the First Amendment. And that's important. They were just like, it wasn't supposed to be. It's supposed to be like the Third Amendment. And it was not written that way.
Mm-hmm.
James Madison wrote it differently, and it wasn't accepted by Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, fine. And of course we get into the Second Amendment.
So it was the conversational compromise.
Yeah. And of course we could get into the Second Amendment and what that means out of the Federalist Papers written by Cicero. Hamilton, by the way, that's what he went as. And what we end up having is what?
Will you let her in?
Yeah, a population. I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, usually she knows that it's about time too.
Come on,
stupid. Come on, stupid. I'm not talking to him. I'm talking to the cat.
There she goes. I don't know why she's talking to me I'm going to move or something. And then we have yes. Yeah.
Come on.
There you go.
There you go.
So then we have this can be decided by population, and every single state is going to vote for its electors based on its population. We're also trying to figure out at that point how we're going to do taxation.
Right.
And
because that, if I remember correctly, was a whole big thing with the War for Independence.
Yes, it was. And this goes in where you have in the Articles of Confederation, which was being replaced by the new Constitution, you have the inability, because they were wanting to separate themselves so much from England or from Britain, that the states were like, yo, we're basically our own country, and you can't tax us.
Yeah.
This was the thing, of course, with Thomas Jefferson, that led later on to the Whiskey Rebellion under John Adams.
Right.
Where it's like, you cannot tax our alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is our alcohol.
See what happens when you try and tax our whiskey.
Yes, which is funny. And it's there are nice little allusions in the Broadway show Hamilton. If you have not seen it, do recommend.
Highly recommend. Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus.
Also get it for the Mandalorian too.
Yeah, it's in the 2nd season right now.
Okay.
Apparently there's a cool little thing at the end of the season that you don't actually know. You just I don't know, draw your own conclusions. And for me, I can't draw, so not great. And what you end up getting is they're like, you cannot tax us. But it's almost impossible to govern a population of a country without proper taxation.
Right.
Because, they had borrowed a bunch of money, especially from France. Exactly. And they needed and from the Netherlands. People don't really know that. They needed to pay back this debt. Yeah, John Adams was actually the envoy to France. At first. And he went over there and hung out with Benjamin Franklin.
Right, yeah. I've seen, what is that? The video we watched about that with their faces from the money.
I don't know.
The poorly explained or
Oh, it may be. It's been a while ago since.
No, it wasn't. We watched it fairly recently.
Oh, I better.
Because it was like Franklin was already over there.
Yeah.
He was all being, being Benjamin Franklin and
Benjamin Franklin.
Girls, wait, no, don't go away.
Oh yes, yeah.
That one.
I do
you know what I'm
that.
talking about,
yes.
right? Yeah.
And so, it's
once I figure it out, I'll link it in the description.
It is, yep, because yes, that's that is, I know what you're talking about, and I'll remember it too.
We'll figure it out later and put it in the description.
And John Adams goes over there, and he's like very, very, John Adams. Yeah, he's a tiny little guy, but he's got some sway. He's the one that after the Boston Massacre, which is a really bad way of saying very, very, very good propaganda, but it wasn't a massacre.
No.
And
it was,
let's be honest, the British probably shouldn't have shot anybody,
but
or 2 or 3 people, also a young person.
Yeah.
But this was not an unprovoked incident.
It was not an unprovoked incident.
And they were like marching around with their muskets like, hey, maybe don't do this. And they started like actually throwing things at them.
Look, they were throwing rocks and shit, right?
Yeah, and ice.
Yeah.
And so unlike in what's actually happening in American protests today, the British were actually in danger.
Yeah, they were.
And so there was no command to fire on anybody, but they did anyways. Yeah. And then they retreated and everything. And they, the command, and they went to the ones that shot were put in jail.
Yeah. Was it like 6?
I think no. They were only like 3 or 4.
Oh, I thought why did I think it was so many more?
There were that many in the line.
Oh,
okay. But and not all of them fired either. And,
well, I was thinking of how many died.
Oh no,
grand total.
No, it was like 3 or 4.
Oh, okay.
That's why it's like calling it the massacre is
that's
good propaganda.
It is good propaganda. It's very good propaganda.
And then John Adams goes, and he is the lawyer in Boston,
right? And
he's approached by the British, which they are still citizens of England,
right?
Somehow, and the taxation without representation thing does make sense. And like, if you're going to tax us, we get to put people into the British Parliament,
right?
And England was like, yeah, but no, you're like our little children.
Yeah, redheaded stepchild.
You get to like sometimes recommend things to us, kinda in like a letter that we're maybe going to get in a month. So let's vote on it prior to that. Also, we don't care. Give us money because we're fighting against France, Spain, Russia, like Denmark, all these. Like, they're like, yo, we're just trying to do like our imperialist thing. We need money.
Yeah.
Also,
we're in a lot of debt.
Also, we need a bunch of goods. And we also just fought the 7 Years' War, which wasn't 7 years. Also, thanks George Washington. It's kind of your fault.
Yeah, it was.
And
it's amazing how much of this stuff I've learned from watching YouTube videos with you and from you explaining it to me, and I very much appreciate that. So not all of this is new to me, so I like that.
There you go.
I like that.
And John Adams actually goes in and he defends the British. It's in a British tribunal, but he defends the British and defends them well.
Yeah.
And they end up getting off basically. Hey, typical weasel, and they go back to England. And it's actually pretty funny. What happens to them, I forget. Probably nothing. And but then John Adams becomes this envoy to France. He goes over there. He finds out Benjamin Franklin is begging the French for money, but also, he's
fucking a lot of French women.
He's doing his thing. Yeah, Ben Franklin. This is the reason he died of syphilis. And he also invented the bifocals.
He did.
Yes,
I knew that.
Yep,
I knew that. You know how I knew that?
No.
The Office.
History from The Office.
Yeah.
And what he does, the earth is flat. And John Adams is sitting there and he's like, motherfucker, what you're doing is, sure, you're making a lot of people very happy, but you're going to like all these parties and all this stuff.
You're not actually accomplishing anything.
Yeah. And he's like, and so Ben Franklin realizes, yo, we're not going to be friends. We're going to be friends, but we're not going to be friends.
Yeah.
So
we'll be colleagues, but not friends.
So he tells the Continental Congress, John Adams has got to go. And so they were like, all right, let's send John Adams up to Denmark, basically.
Right.
Up to the Netherlands. And why does this show a dislike? I don't know. Maybe me.
Probably me.
And he goes over to Denmark, and then he also gets really sick, and he ends up staying on like this vessel, and they do like the bloodletting thing and all that stuff, and he's not there for most of it, and so the war is actually going to end.
Yeah.
And John Adams finally gets better, and he goes in and he's like, "Yo, I promise we're gonna win. So give us money, and also, oh, we just lagged a little bit. Give us money and also ships, please. Thanks a bunch." And so they did, because they realized that yes, exactly. And they were like, "Yo, we don't like England neither, right?" So, or whatever, however they say that in Dutch, I don't really know. And they were like, "Sure, we got you." And so they did, and the United States went into a bunch of debt.
Right.
To France, which France was going to be like, "Yo, let's collect, because also revolution is happening here, and we would rather not have the rest of our heads not attached anymore."
Yeah, sorry, King Louis.
Marie Antoinette. Let them eat cake type stuff.
Yeah.
And so they signed a treaty where we're like, "Yo, we're going to help you. Also, we're going to pay back our debt. We promise." How are they going to pay back a debt if they couldn't properly tax?
Right.
So the states are like, I mean, thanks, but no thanks. It's like if you're like Pennsylvania, which is where the capital is going to be.
Right.
You go down into Virginia, and you're like, "Hey, Virginia, we'd like to tax you. So we'd like to do that. Would you mind giving us money?" And Virginia is like, not gonna.
No. Yeah.
And that was out of the Articles of Confederation. So they wrote this into the Constitution that the proper taxation was going to happen. Well, how are we going to have proper taxation? Proper taxation is going to be based upon population.
Right.
Yeah. So what's cool here is that the southern states are like, these are the slave owning states, right?
Yeah. So this is where 3/5 compromise comes in, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And
sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but I'm just making sure.
Yeah. So you have southern states that are like, population, you say? Turns out we've got a large population.
Yeah.
Of what we're going to go ahead and call people, right? And we would like to make sure that they're added into our population.
Yeah. For the sake of the representation.
Actually, in taxation, where they're like, "Yo, no, they're not people.
Yeah.
They're not people. We can't be taxed on them.
Yeah.
They don't have any rights.
But we want to count them for the sake of representation."
Yeah, and so the southern states are like, "No, they're not people. You don't get and so the northern states are like, "Okay, yeah, we anti-slavery, which is good." And so they're like, "All right, yeah, we're not going to count them as people." They said, "No, we need to count them as people because we need taxation." So yes, give taxation money because we have to do this. And the southern states like, I don't know what you're talking about. They ain't people, right? They're property. And at one time, you actually get a northern politician that says very eloquently, "So then they have the same amount of rights as rocks," right?
That's for after the show. A funny question for after the show.
And there's actually like these things where it's just like, well, then are they figuring out you have this representation in Congress based upon population as well.
Right.
And so what do these southern slaveholding states want to do? And so what do the southern states want to do? They're like, we need to have representation in Congress. Hey, we have people. Look at all these people that we have. They do a lot of good work. Look at them. Look at all of these people.
We value them.
And so northern states are like, I thought they weren't. And the southern states are like, yeah, they're not.
But they are.
Exactly. And so then they had after you have the Connecticut Compromise, you have the Virginia Compromise, and then it comes into this compromise, which the northern states are like, all right, we need to get proper taxation. And so these kind of people need to be counted. But also we have to have proper representation in Congress, as well as on the electoral map. So these kind of people, and this is where the northern states are like, maybe slavery slavery's not so bad because we need it, you know. And there's like this, there's this amazing divide.
They waffle. A little
And
bit.
so they agree then with the southern states that here's the compromise. That and it's written in the Constitution this way, and it's still in there. This is in Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution.
Yep.
And it says that you have taxation will be levied upon 3/5 of other persons. The Constitution is written in a very good way that it doesn't mention what's commonly known as slavery.
Yeah.
Yes. And they also had an earlier compromise that they wrote that said, hey, southern states, we're going to consider this, but also let's ban the importation of slavery from Africa. And this is going to happen. And this is, I said this earlier, and this, of course, comes from a not included track from Hamilton, where Lin-Manuel Miranda is talking as Thomas Jefferson. And he says, he mentions the word compromise, and he says that the states have to wait until 1808 to ban the importation of slaves. And so they actually said, okay, we'll do that. Just do this for us.
Right.
We promise. And they end up going and saying, okay, we'll do the 3/5. And so how that works is for every 5 slaves, you have 3.
Right.
It's almost like they're not counted as, like, you know, people. And then so if you had 10 slaves, you'd have 6 people.
Right.
Exactly. And so what they're able to do is say, here you go. This is how we're going to do this. And also we'll do proper taxation based upon this as well. And so the northern states were like, well, we don't like slavery, but we like money. So slavery, cool. And that's actually how that went, is you have the 3/5 compromise built into the U.S. Constitution for taxation, as well as for representation, and then in Congress, as well as in the Electoral College.
Right.
The Electoral College is based upon how many representatives you have in the House and then in the Senate.
Okay.
So you have 2 senators for every single state, as I mentioned.
Right.
And then if you have those larger populations, like in Pennsylvania and Virginia and Massachusetts, then you have more representation in the Electoral College.
Right.
And so what happened is that the northern states were like, this should benefit us. No, it didn't. Because as it turned out, they would undervalue the amount, like their land in the South. And they would also, maybe not in the beginning, tell them how many slaves they had. Right. And so they actually would say, well, we only have this many, but in fact, they had this many.
Yeah.
Especially in your southern plantations. And so what happened is it actually did not help. It helped the southern slave states quite a bit more. And they actually had overrepresentation in Congress, which ended up pushing back the importation of slavery.
Right.
As well as it led to so you had the Fugitive Slave Act of 1790, signed by George Washington, as you had this expanded in 1850 into, you have to give them back to us, and you cannot say no, even if we just say that there are slaves.
Right.
We
don't actually have to prove that they're ours.
Yep. And had they not agreed to this compromise, the northern non-slaveholding states, which were just non-slaveholding states.
Yeah, it's not like they weren't
plenty of the shit in the north. And they ended up losing out in this. And so as you get closer to like the Civil War, the Civil War actually could have happened, and we could have had the abolition of slavery, much like we did in England, much sooner, and maybe without a war. And but they didn't do that because they had overrepresentation in Congress and the southern slaveholding states.
They gamed the system, basically.
Yeah, and it really worked out well for them, until the Civil War.
Yeah.
That didn't work out so well for them.
It did not. Because, the South lost.
Yes, which is objectively a good thing. No more slavery.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
And so over time, what has happened is you have, every single time that we have added states, the state based upon population has had a number that go to the House of Representatives, and then you also have the 2 senators.
Right.
Now, the idea of the 2 senators, considered, of course, and written, that was written, of course, by James Madison. That was the representation of the states wasn't, there wasn't like as large of a disparity as there is today. And I don't know that they
Right.
could have considered that. Come on, they couldn't even consider flight. And
It's true.
and so you have
Couldn't even consider California at the time.
yeah, or the fact that there were things over there. You likely wouldn't have had the Trail of Tears without this, where Andrew Jackson with under the command of Thomas Jefferson, you wouldn't have had Andrew Jackson basically trying to repeal the national bank.
Yeah.
Right. And so somehow he's on the 20 now. It's hilarious. And so
Trash.
you had all those in there, and it became you add these up, and then whoever got to the majority, and all you have to have is the simple majority, would be the next president. Now, voting in the United States has not always been so difficult. There was actually in the beginning of the country and voting, people, even if they were drunk as shit, would just walk out into the street and say, "I'm voting for this guy," and that was it. Like, and they would just, yeah, there's your vote.
I feel like that's some slight hyperbole.
No, that's not. It's not. That's real.
What?
Yeah, they could just walk out in the street and just announce it via voice. Yeah. They're
They
like,
didn't have to like be in front of somebody who
anybody that hears them say it. Yeah.
would they have to like report, I heard so and so say they're voting for so and so?
Yeah.
But then what if they lie? That doesn't seem like
Well, neither is the 3/5 compromise.
well, yeah, that's true.
And
That's true. Stand corrected.
and then you would have the and into like the 1800s into the 19th century, what you had the Reconstruction thing. Yeah. What we ended up having is a system of voting that only white land-owning men at the beginning of this could vote.
Right.
And so that means that women didn't have the right to vote at all.
Right.
Slaves obviously didn't, because they're sitting there going, how can they be counted as people that don't have any rights?
Yeah.
And
Most immigrants.
Exactly. And I wouldn't have the right to vote.
Right.
And neither would any indigenous peoples.
Right.
And so, and that's kind of in the compromise, but it's not the big part of it. And that, as that expanded out, you have these now northern states, which are starting to figure out, we're not doing so well in Congress. Maybe we should expand voting rights.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't because they wanted equality.
No.
It was because the northern states starting to figure out, hey, our population's kind of changing here.
Yeah.
But we still haven't caught up with the fact that South Carolina is like 67% slaves.
Yeah.
Or 60 or 70% slaves. Maybe we should go ahead and just add these things. And so then what was added in there was that all white men would have the right to vote.
So yay, you.
Good job to me. I finally get the right to vote. And this is in the 19th century. And so that would, they start to balance the table a little bit. Then what they figured out was like, oh, it turns out there's other white men in the South too. And this, I didn't like, you're talking about an overrepresentation in Congress. Again, getting toward, toward 1850, which is why the second Fugitive Slave Act was passed so easily in Congress. And then they had like the Kansas-Nebraska Act. They had things with like, Missouri compromises, you get the Mason-Dixon line, and all of this stuff where they did not have, no matter what, this proper representation. And you also had a low electorate voting.
Right.
Now, it's still more than today, kind of, if we can depend on it. But it's like today, recently, it hasn't been very high.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually what I'm getting into, because we get into what's known as disenfranchisement. And then in 1961, Congress got together, kind of like speeding forward here. Congress got together and they said, hey, let me go back, because then you have it at the end of the 19th century, you have what's known as the women's suffrage movement.
Yes.
And of course, this is Susan B. Anthony, and this is Helen Keller, and all of these women that were like, hey, white women should have the right to vote.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The white women's suffrage. Let's make that abundantly clear.
Let me go back even further. Sorry. At the end of the Civil War Because 1862, you have the Emancipation Proclamation,
Right.
which said, "Hey, you can't come up here and get more slaves." And you had that everybody is. We have the everybody's created equal thing.
Mm-hmm.
We got this. Congratulations, we did it, guys. Turns out no.
Confetti.
And so you had
confetti.
Yeah, it is. It's up there, Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
And which is kind of hilarious because this actually puts Missouri into the Southeastern Conference for athletics, which just kind of makes sense. And then the states, of course, got to decide if there were slave states or free states. This happened in Oregon as well. Oregon decided prior to this that they were going to be a free state, that we were not going to have slavery here. Not because they hated slavery so much, but rather because the population of Oregon didn't want to live around them.
Yep.
And so in the Oregon Constitution, and you can find this, even though they have attempted to scrub it.
They have.
You can find this in, I think, Article 31 and Article 32, I think, where it actually says there's no slavery because the population voted on that. But also, Black people can't live here.
Yeah.
They are banned from living here at all. And that was in there from the 19th century up until 1929. And so you had the states which could choose that. But that means you also had to add 2 states, where one state was going to choose to be a slave state and the other one was going to be this is the part of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, where the other one would say, we're going to be a free state. And you had to have that. And that was a point in where there was actually a fair-ish compromise. And so the 3/5 compromise was effectively repealed. It never was repealed, but effectively it was repealed with the 13th Amendment to the Constitution.
The 13th Amendment still has that loophole, which
yes,
is
it does.
A whole nother video.
Yes, it does. But the 13th Amendment to the Compromise, or to the Constitution, is very specific in that that everybody that is a United States citizen, which citizenship and natural born citizen is a bit ambiguous in the Constitution, based upon who could be president. Yeah, Tapioca, absolutely.
Yeah. We only learned that whenever we came up here. I don't remember what it was you were researching, or I only remember when we came here.
I had a knowledge of some of that, but I did not realize how racist Oregon was. I mean, you have chapters of the KKK up here.
Proud Boys.
The Proud Boys are actually based in Vancouver, which has been interesting recently.
Yeah.
And the 13th Amendment gave Black people also, so freed men. Again, very, very vague in you'd say, slavery is bad, but also the word slavery is not in the Constitution.
Right.
You had freed men and stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
And this is what was put into the Constitution. And this also began Reconstruction with, hey, also they can hold public office. These are things that Abraham Lincoln actually didn't want.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln was despite the whole Emancipation Proclamation thing, Abraham Lincoln was still fucking racist.
Yeah.
Wildly racist, as in he wanted to send them to Haiti?
Out the coast of Haiti, yes. There was actually an island that they ended up purchasing.
Yeah. And
this was during the Civil War in 1862, where I think 500 slaves and freedmen got on a boat and they went down to this island that's which is funny because I'm like, maybe this is where Michael Crichton got the idea with Jurassic Park, because if you read that, it says off the coast of Costa Rica for Isla Nublar, which is where they ended up doing all of the cloning and stuff.
I thought it was Isla Nublar.
Sure.
I don't know.
That's how I've always said it, but if I'm wrong, I've been wrong.
I mean, it's possible I'm wrong too.
And they actually took these, what are now freedmen, they took them down to, you're a naturally born citizen, you're a citizen by nature of your birth. Yes. To be, and in addition to that is, guess who wasn't born in the United States?
Ted Cruz?
Yes. But who was not born in what was the United States? George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, John Quincy Adams.
I know he wasn't.
Or no, John Quincy Adams. No, he wasn't.
I know he wasn't president, but
Alexander Hamilton. He was born in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
But
West Indies?
Yeah. But because there was no United States, at that point. So they could not have been natural born citizens.
Right.
And so there's a bit of ambiguity there about what does it mean to be a natural born citizen. It's actually never really been, it's been challenged a few times saying you have to have birthright citizenship, but there's never actually been a Supreme Court ruling that says this is what it means. There is ambiguity there.
So that can that only really be brought up if somebody who is like say Ted Cruz were
Let's say his dad is actually from Cuba, which it is,
yeah,
without being a citizen.
But like, say he's born because he was born in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Ted Cruz was.
Yeah. If he were to be elected president,
mm-hmm.
but he had the one because his mother
was
American.
It turns out that they were, it's kind of like with Barack Obama as well.
Yeah.
Where you have his father is from Kenya and then his mom is from Hawaii.
Right.
Kansas, sorry. He was born in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And then you have this thing where because one of your parents, but if you're born outside the country, yeah, you're still considered, as Ted Cruz was, and I don't remember which of his parents, as Ted Cruz was, a natural born citizen.
Yeah. So then if somebody had challenged that, then it could set a Supreme Court precedent.
It could, yes.
But only if somebody challenges it.
It's been kind of challenged.
Yeah.
Because what we also have is people that come to the United States just to have children. And the children, because they're born on American soil, are citizens. American citizens.
Yeah.
This also brings up the point that I don't know the founders really considered, because they didn't consider a lot. Somebody like Ilhan Omar, and I brought this up recently. Ilhan Omar is from Ethiopia or Somalia, I forget. And she immigrated here with her parents as a refugee when she was 7.
Yeah, super young.
And so this is also a lot like DACA.
Right.
She, of course, now is in the United States House of Representatives, and she represents, I think, Minnesota's 7th. I could be wrong about that, but Minnesota.
Yeah.
And and of course, that's every 2 years, whereas the Senate is every 6 years.
Right.
Yes, and there are no term limits. Feel free to get on that. Dianne Feinstein. If somebody. Anchor babies. Somebody correct us. Anchor babies, exactly.
Yeah, I'm very ashamed to say that I have actually used that term before when I was much younger and much more conservative.
We all do things that make mistakes.
Yeah,
have points of view that are. No, it happens.
I'm disgusted with myself for that.
No, it happens. And then you have somebody, but again, like Ilhan Omar, who represents the United States in the House of Representatives.
Right.
But regardless, can never be president.
Right.
Is there anything to say that she is any less of an American than anybody else? She holds public office.
Right. Which I think would make her arguably more American than, a lot of us.
Yeah, who don't hold public office and choose not to. Yeah. And so that's in the Constitution ambiguously.
Right.
Because there's no real definition of what natural born citizen actually means.
Right.
And so, because if we consider the amount of people that we brought into the United States forcibly against their will from Africa,
right.
These individuals at the Emancipation Proclamation in the 13th Amendment were considered American citizens. How could we say at this point then that they could not be president?
Right.
Because they toiled here under slavery and they are now American citizens. How would they not be eligible to be president? And so there's a lot of that there where it's like, this is part of the thing where maybe we should do some rewriting of the Constitution, most of it.
Yeah.
And what you have then is in 1865, you have freedmen. Mm-hmm. And by the way, yes, going down to Haiti, 500 Americans that are they went down to Haiti, to this island. It's Isla or Isla, whichever.
I don't know.
It starts with a V, I forget. And they actually went down there with this person who was a Southern former slaveholder. Yeah.
That could only end well.
Yeah, and they went down there. And on the way there was a outbreak of smallpox, I think, on the way there. And so they were delayed to get there. And this is actually something Abraham Lincoln was in favor of. He was also in favor of this happening and paying the former slaveholders for their property that they no longer have.
Like a buyback program.
Kind of, yeah.
For slaves.
Yep. Yeah, compensating them. And they went down there, and the person who, and I forget this guy's name, and I'm sorry, but definitely look into this because it's real. He basically was like, gold standard don't work no more. Give me all of your money and everything, and I'm going to give you back paper currency, and this is the only thing you can use to buy and sell things. And so these former slaves worked down there on property that they couldn't necessarily own, and maybe not the best wages. It didn't work out, and they ended up coming. They ended up, not all of them. Plenty died, and they came back into the United States. We also had a place that was set up by the American. Basically, it's the American independence or something like that, where they were abolitionists. They set up in Africa, which is still a place, a country called Liberia.
Yeah,
and this is right north of Sierra Leone. And this was a place. Now we can bring them back to Africa, to where they're from. Which important. They weren't necessarily from Liberia, but take them back there so they can live in Africa. And some of them actually went there as well. Yeah. To where that became, and Liberia is still a place.
It is. Yeah.
They gained their independence in the 19th century, and they didn't have to fight for it either. Weird. And there was also the talk of another place in down by Guatemala, Panama, in Central America, where we'd send the former slaves. And so that was actually something with Abraham Lincoln that he wanted to do. And he also, of course, in a meeting with black suffrage individuals, that he actually blamed slaves for the Civil War. Like, if you weren't here. To which the slaves said, "Yeah, you think?"
That's such victim blaming.
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln, the original gaslighter.
Yeah. And so you have, at this point, hey, all atheists, no, it is okay. Hi, and besides the U.S. on the imperial unit system, that might be the case. I don't know. But then at the 13th Amendment, what you have now is that freed slaves, men, could both vote, and hold public office during Reconstruction. And this actually happened in Mississippi immediately.
I knew that.
Yep. And because
that's so surprising.
Yeah, it's because they had a vast majority of the population.
That's true. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. They probably just had this overwhelming number of freed slaves that were all that immediately gained the right to vote. There was no such thing as voter registration, and they were like, "Yo, we should probably do this." And so they did, and they had, for the first 10, 15 years, they had control of Mississippi, and they were like, "Yo, we gonna change some shit here," and they did a good job. And then the white people were like, "You're doing a good job, so we hate you, and we're gonna do this against our own best interest," which Mississippi certainly hasn't changed since then. No.
And they murdered people in the streets, had a ton of riots. They were this is where you get some things like the KKK, and they were like, "Yo, this is bad for us," and so we're gonna murder a bunch of you and also make it. And they put in things in place. They were known as the Black Codes, and made it so it's very difficult. This is also where Jim Crow stuff comes into play.
Right.
And of course, this is all after Plessy versus Ferguson, and all this stuff where they made it almost impossible for Black people to vote.
Right.
Black men. And as you're talking about people who were elected to the United States Senate and House Representatives who were Black, the first one I believe was from Mississippi, and they would not let that person. Congress voted against that person confirming themselves to, or being confirmed, which you don't necessarily have to be confirmed, but basically was like a recall that the first two black men that were elected to United States Congress were not allowed to become sitting members of Congress. And these, of course, were men from the South. Northern states didn't necessarily disagree.
They probably didn't really fight against it much.
Yeah, exactly.
Gross.
And so black men have the right to vote, but it's not really extended to them.
Yeah.
In fact, it's made almost impossible into the former slave states. And then you get into like the end of the 19th century. And this is the point where white women are like, yo, hi there. We've always been free, so we should be able to vote.
Yeah.
And again, Susan B. Anthony and Helen Keller.
Okay.
Interesting. Sorry about that.
Let's see if y'all can.
Yeah, that was
minor technical difficulties for a second there.
That was
so
very
if you can hear
interesting.
us talking.
Don't know why that happens. And again, it only happens to us.
Yeah.
No, Tapioca, you're fine. Technical difficulties. This is gonna be amazing for our 18-hour stream upcoming. And so they said, yo, we're gonna get the right to we deserve the right to vote. Said white women.
Yeah.
And so then there was there were enough of them and then the Congress was they had enough people in the states to say, sure, we should probably allow this. And then so you had that passed as well, to where white women now had the right to vote.
Right. Which was 100 years ago.
100 years ago this year.
Yeah.
What you didn't have is that black women didn't have the right to vote.
Yeah. Nor, like indigenous women or
anybody that's not a white woman.
Yeah. It's all like or indigenous women who have been there since before the beginning.
Yes. And so this comes to a head because then the southern states would make it so, okay, well, white women can vote, and apparently so can black men. But then it was also amended later that black women did at that point. Now this is decades later. They do now they can vote. I promise.
I swear they can. We're not going to make it difficult for you at all.
And they started putting in together things that are known as literacy tests. Not just showing that that you can read and that you know the English language, but like
difficult stuff, right?
Yes. And then they made it toward, so then at that point, of course, so he said, wait, that doesn't track. I know. I'm trying to remember how black women got the right to vote, because they were actually they had the right to vote prior to the Civil Rights Act and to the Voting Rights Act, which happened in the mid-60s. Anyway, I will remember that, and I'll put it in the notes, something like that. I apologize for that.
No. He said it's because they're white. Wait, that doesn't track.
No, I think no, I don't think so. I think it's because I think I misplaced something with black women having the not just right to vote, but
I don't know
how that all transpired.
I don't know.
And literacy tests, as well as poll taxes.
Yeah.
And they would at times make it, if you've ever watched the movie Selma, at the beginning of that, you see in Alabama this young black woman who goes up and she's trying for like the 5th and 6th and 7th time to go and register to vote, and the person that's there starts asking her all these questions about the U.S. Constitution and then about the Alabama Constitution. And she actually knows all of these answers.
Yeah.
And then she gets to one where she like hesitates.
Yeah.
And they nope.
Yeah.
And they reject it. So the states had the basically the ability at this point to say you don't qualify to vote. And this is how they were suppressing the Black vote in the South. And also sometimes changing polling locations without telling anybody. There were an incredible amount, there's an incredible amount of suppression that was obvious.
Right.
Anymore, it's maybe a little less obvious.
Yeah, it's only mildly more covert now.
Yes. But poll taxes were a big thing.
Yeah.
And so in the mid 1960s, obviously, not just in the mid 1960s, but you have the civil rights movement, and which I've got this shirt where it says, voting rights are civil rights.
Yeah.
And that's really what this is. Because when there is a poll tax for the profession, I would not be surprised. I don't know that.
I know who that's a good question for.
Legal Eagle.
Andrew Torres.
Oh yeah, Andrew Torres or Andrew Seidel.
Yeah,
Seidel?
yeah, he'd be.
Is it Seidel or Seidel?
Seidel.
Okay. And so what we have is the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, 1964, 1965, which guaranteed the right to vote to all people.
Mm-hmm.
Without any kind of barrier.
Mm-hmm.
There's barriers that
Yeah.
still exist, like in the state of Florida, where until recently you have Rick Scott there as the governor, and you have a lot of states where felons don't have the right to vote.
Right.
Incarcerated people don't have the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And this, by the way, is disenfranchisement of Black people. And because of how that has gone, let's just say recently, and at about the same time, you have a law that's passed in 1961, which limits the amount of electoral votes,
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty cool considering the possibilities that currently exist, especially with Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And they are required to allow this voting
Right.
of everybody. And so you actually have now a constituency that has these rights to vote. It only took until 1964, 1965.
Yeah. No
And
deal.
we still are passing laws that make it easier for people to vote, where now you have early voting,
Mm-hmm.
and now you have things saying, hey, you can't just change voting locations without telling anybody.
Certain states have strictly like the mail-in voting.
Yes, which we do in Oregon, universal, as well as Washington and Utah, which is pretty cool that Utah does, considering you wouldn't think that. A lot of people don't think that of like a Republican state.
Yeah. Uncle Doug filled out I was listening to some previous episodes. I have a backlog of How to Heretic. Uncle Doug was like filling out his ballot like on the show, like mid-record and stuff. So he was like, "Button here's."
Actually recorded a video on the phone like a week and a half ago when I was showing how to fill out the ballot for Texas, and then just like never made the video and put it online. Oops. The only reason we didn't is because I accidentally showed her barcode on. I was trying not to.
Yeah,
the
no, I
barcode
know.
for her vote.
Yeah.
Oops.
It's a good thing I warned you though.
Yes, because I did not see that. I thought that I had covered it. I may have noticed it when I was doing editing, but you have, and also the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act, as well as affirmative action, have to be renewed every 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this is on purpose.
Yeah.
They signed this on purpose because we're looking forward to a time where we don't have to.
Right.
Not yet. And then, as mentioned, 1961, they set a cap on the number of electoral votes at 538.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you get into the current electoral system and why people don't like it.
Yeah.
Certain people. Now, there is no constitutional precedent that says it has to be at 538. This is simply what Congress put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me not too long ago, because the Washington, D.C., which is, by the way, in the Constitution, as it's written, it is not a state. It can't be, because it can't have, it cannot be governed by anybody less than them, because you can't govern the Congress and the president as a governor. And so it's written very specifically that this is not a state in the Constitution.
But so many people live there that
Exactly.
are not, Congress and the president. And even so, pretty much none of those people that are in Congress have their permanent residence as Washington, D.C. So it doesn't fucking matter.
In fact, only one person does. And that person is in the U.S. House of Representatives.
The one who actually lives there, who represents D.C.
Yes. Washington, D.C., though, has people. Right. It has citizens.
It does.
And it is not a state, but it has one electoral vote. It actually has one. And it is like 98% Democrat currently.
Yeah.
It and Hawaii are the most the safest states, if you would consider DC the safest place for Democrats or for really any candidate.
Yeah.
If you're like running as a Republican, you'd be like, you know what, I'm good. Like you're not going to win anything.
Yeah, just don't bother.
And by the way, what we have is a representative from. And she's actually been there. I forget her name, but she's actually in the notes that I've written on. I wrote these back like in June.
Oh yeah, she's been there for a while.
Yeah, she has since the 90s. And before her, I think it was like her dad or her uncle or something. And so it's almost like a family thing and she represents the city. She represents DC very well. And DC recently, and over time, DC has become more, certainly more open to this and actually more in favor of this because they're like, yo, we should definitely have representation properly. And because she's in the House, she brought forward has three, I think it has one, because states have a minimum of three. And I think DC only has one.
I don't know. You have your phone, you can Google it.
I do.
I don't have my phone, it's in the other room charging.
Because I'm pretty certain that's the case.
Case system.
The case system. Oh, they do have three. My bad.
Oh, thank you, Debbie Agua Weasel.
Yep. My apologies that I thought that they only had one.
I don't know.
Something, because it actually has to do with...
Maybe it's just the representative.
Could be. But the question came up, could you get another... could you get past 538? And yes, you can. You can get up to 538 or 539. But you probably wouldn't with the District of Columbia because the population is not high enough. You probably
only has so much room.
You would if you made DC a state, you wouldn't just add three more.
Right.
It already has three representatives.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't. It would probably stay the same. It might have one more if you added it as a state. And the Republicans are really against this because, again, the safest place for Democrats like in the country is DC.
Yeah.
And they're also against Puerto Rico becoming a state because of the electoral votes. And they
I thought it was just because they're racist.
Well, yeah. Some of them are. We know that's true.
The people against statehood, not people.
And also Puerto Rico, we can't advocate for something we don't know they want. So
yeah, that's true.
If you want to become a state, awesome. Also, we probably shouldn't have them as a territory if they don't want to be one.
Yeah, sort of like American Samoa and stuff. Is that still a territory?
U.S. Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
Yep. 435 from the House. Yep. And 100 from the Senate and from the District of Columbia. Yep. So you have 538. And that's how many people in the Electoral College based on representation. And again, this should benefit the more populated states because you have more electoral votes. Get into that in a second. Because we're going to what, 1 o'clock?
1:15.
Okay. DC has representative there, and they voted overwhelmingly, like almost 80%. Hey, we want to be a state and also change our name, right? Because we don't want to be called Washington because of not a good person.
Yeah.
And it's like they
George Washington was trash.
He was not a good person at all. And they brought that to the House floor, and it actually passed earlier this year. And this young lady stood there with the number of votes that it passed with on the steps of the Capitol building. And she was like, yes, We have done it in the House. There's no fucking way the Senate's going to say yes.
No.
But we got it.
Yeah.
And
she can't, like, I don't know if you've already mentioned, she can't vote on anything.
Exactly. They have a representative, DC does, in the House of Representatives, who cannot vote.
That's representation without representation.
Yeah.
It makes sense up here.
She cannot vote and could not vote to on statehood.
Yeah.
On the place, standing on the soil that she represented.
Yeah.
That's maybe not a great idea. I understand what the original in Guam, yes. I understand the original intent of this, but this is not how this is played out.
Right.
Because you're not talking about governing at this point, right? This is actually a population that is not a insignificant population,
right?
And so there's this possibility that, again, flip the Senate this time around. I can get into that now, or I can get into that on our stream on Tuesday.
Tuesday stream,
yes.
Because we only have so much time.
Great answer to that is yes, by the way. And also, I think they have like 98% chance of retaining and actually expanding the House. So yes. I've written a lot about this over the course of the past couple of months, as well as I've predicted this for, I don't know, a couple of years.
Yeah, it was like at least the last 2 years that we've been together.
Yeah. So, you know, these, and if you were able to make a statehood for Washington and change it to, I think it's Douglas, for Frederick Douglass, he's from there. Something I forget, but it's you know, it changes the name.
Yeah.
And I think Mama Eighth is actually gonna be on the show with us for a little while on Tuesday, talking, because very important, Georgia, very important. I called something for Georgia yesterday or 2 days ago.
He was surprised.
So
he was surprised.
That'll be interesting to listen to. So he'll be on with us for a little while on Tuesday, and you would have probably one more electoral vote, which, if you look into like last year or 2016, Donald Trump had 304. If you look at the tally, it says 306. You had what is known as faithless electors that said, yeah, we don't want to. We realize that this person won what's known as the state's popular vote, but we're not gonna. We're gonna give it to somebody like Rush Limbaugh or somebody, and they did that. And so you actually had 306. One of these was from Texas, and you actually had like this 306, but it's technically it's only 304.
Nice.
So you probably had one more with Washington becoming a state, and that moved from 538 to 539. Why is that significant? And this is why a lot of people, particularly on the right now, don't want this.
Because Nate Silver would have to change the name of his website.
That's true. And as it turns out, 539.com, I looked into this, was purchased by somebody from Germany on purpose.
God damn!
I looked into that.
Damn you!
But also because it would mean that there is not the possibility of a tie. What happens in the event of an electoral tie? You have to get to 270, right? What happens in the event of an electoral tie at, like, you know, you're like your 268s? It goes then to the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives then vote on it. Who has current control, and for the majority of the last 100 years of the House, is Democrats.
Yep.
And so there is they are against this because it would mean so they're against that, but it also would mean that there cannot be a tie.
Right.
And so you'll see that they'll have more to where they want to say, well, in the event that this happens while we have control of the House, we want to, and they've had that recently. They've had that for like the past, until 2018. They've had it for like the last 10 years.
Yeah.
We want control, but we also don't want to make it so. You're not changing the name. There you go.
Damn it.
Where you're like, we want to make this so no matter what is advantageous for one political party, and so they're against it altogether. Yeah, because currently you have that 270 is the number. Once you get to 270, it's over with. And they are against making it so there cannot be a tie. Because they want the chance in the House. Yeah. But then if you get and you tie in the House, which actually happened back in 1808 or 1804, I forget. What you had is that what you had is that there was a tie both in the electoral college, and they had a tie in the House.
I do that sometimes.
You had a tie altogether.
How?
Well, because they tied.
Who votes on it when there's a tie in the House?
The president pro tempore.
The vice president.
Vice president.
So we all know who the vice
and
president's
this is
gonna
why.
vote for if.
So the person actually, the person 1824, the person actually won. There's no necessity of majority votes. The person actually won those votes. Was one Andrew Jackson, but he didn't win the number of electors. And so it has happened more than once, yes. And I'm gonna get into that in a second, where they did not win the number of electors, and so it was a tie, and so it went to the House. The House then was like, okay, sure, but also no. And so then you had, this was effectively the end of a couple of parties. This is effectively the end of like the Whig Party, effectively the end of the Federalists. This was also the beginning of the end of what was known as the Democratic Republicans,
right?
Who were mostly from the South. And yeah, he did. Fucking Henry Clay, man. And then you had because he would go, because he actually took a lot of those votes from Andrew Jackson. Right. Andrew Jackson probably should have been the 6th president. Yeah. And instead of later on becoming president, it's totally sanctioning a lot of things against more indigenous people. And he's on the $20 bill, by the way.
Trash.
And he was a slaver. And Harriet Tubman, right? No. And she's going to be on the back of the 20. Thanks, Steve Mnuchin. And
I want to buy that stamp.
Right?
It's got like Harriet Tubman's face, so you can just stamp it over. Over
and then it went to the House, and then basically it came to the vice president, who then said John Quincy Adams became the president at that point. This is a point where the person would go on, and this actually has happened 5 times in our country's history, where you have the winner of the popular vote. I see we keep glitching, and it's pissing me off.
Oh
no. The winner of the popular vote does not automatically become president.
Right. James
Madison was actually in favor of this. Partially because, again, if we're talking about the 3-5 compromise, they had more people.
Right.
Yeah. To where we don't do the popular vote. And if you're alive today, and we're alive in 2016 and cognizant of the situation, you're aware of this, because Hillary Clinton became the Jacksonians, who kind of became the Democrats, like the Martin Van Buren campaign. Yes, not getting into all of that history, because it's
a lot. We only have so much time.
And then the Republican Party began under Abe Lincoln.
I didn't say Abe Lincoln. I said Abe Lincoln.
We talk about the Southern strategy, which exists. Candace Owens, weird that you think that you were actually the victim of hate crimes in Connecticut, where you're from, but then also racism doesn't exist. Anyways, grifters, man.
I know. Grifters gonna grift.
Because we give Charles Savant, man, I tell you what, you do a good job. Where Hillary Clinton won 3 million more votes than Donald Trump, but because of our current electoral system, which some people would say favors the low population states, we have a lot of those. Yeah. Like actually, will you pull up the first one?
Yes.
Real quick, because this is going to. So it is. The far left one, I think.
Yeah, but I gotta put this over here first.
Very good. Yeah, so that one right here.
It out.
This one right here.
Everybody's seeing my.
That one.
So then, this one.
No, that one. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Very good. So what we have. We'll make it bigger. Yeah, I'm cool with this. Yep. What we have here, this is a view of the electoral map in 2016. where you can see that Donald Trump won with 306, 304 electoral votes, and Hillary Clinton with 232. Well, so people say, how is this possible? If, and this is something you've heard the refrain over the course of the past 4 years, should have been longer than that, regarding the Electoral College. How is this possible? Well, it is because if you look at those small states, states have, and DC, which you can actually, gives Omahans the most voting power in the nation. Well, also Maine. As you can see, Maine up there as well. This actually happened in 2008. Nebraska is unique, but also maybe shouldn't be so unique, depending on what you think should happen regarding the Electoral College. And Maine. Those are only 2 states. So you have 48 states that they do what is known as the it's not a mandatory runoff, because that is what we have with ranked choice voting, which is a video you should see before Tuesday. But in this case, what they say is whoever wins the state's popular vote, which does not need to be 50%, so you do not need to get a majority of voters. But whoever wins, like in even in Texas in 2016, Donald Trump won 48% of the vote. He won in a state that voted in 8.9 million people voted. Donald Trump won the state by just over 900,000 votes, and you have 48. I think it was 48 to he didn't get about 50% in Texas, or he was 9. No, he's 9 points ahead. He got it right above 50% in Texas.
Oh, okay.
But another state, Florida, obviously, but where they don't get the majority, and they still get all the state's electoral votes that then basically required to give to that winner. And so even though Hillary Clinton won millions of votes, over 8 million votes in Texas in 2016, she gets 0. Ugh. 0 votes in Texas's 38.
I don't like that.
Which, by the way, rose and by the way, the number of electoral votes is of course based on representation,
right?
And that changes every 10 years,
right,
with the United States Census. This is enumerated in the Constitution as well,
right,
because the census does this. Texas will again likely gain electoral votes after the census after this year, because they are the fastest growing state as far as population goes in the country.
Right.
Conversely, states like West Virginia or Kentucky or maybe even Pennsylvania are looking to possibly lose electoral votes. And so that makes things like we have the tipping point states like Pennsylvania, which currently has 20. Tipping point, by the way, means that it puts it over 270, where you have maybe not as tipping point as it would be. This is where the 538 comes in. Somebody gains one, you lose one somewhere else. If now usually that number is around 70,000, to where you would, now the minimum, no matter what, again, is 3. So Washington, Wyoming, which has 520,000, I think 560,000, it's barely above 500,000, have 3 electoral votes. So nobody can be below 3. You'll gain electoral votes based upon population of about 70,000.
Yeah.
And then you'll also lose. It's easier to gain one or to lose one than gain one. But if you lose one, yet someone has to go somewhere else.
Right.
And so it's how do you apportion that properly? It's interesting process. Yeah. So no matter what, even if let's chat about Michigan, 2016 Michigan, you are separated from Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump by literally just it was 10 or 11,000 votes. So you're talking about like 48.1 to like 48.
Yeah.
It is a 0.1 percentage difference.
Yeah.
Guess what? Donald Trump gets all 16.
Yep.
So this is considered unfair by some folks, which I think there is some merit to that. And so what you have here is that in these states, and you can see the electoral map, and Donald Trump will tell you this, looks very red. Look at all of the area.
So much red, but
yes,
so few people.
Yes, that is what I'm going to get into in just a second. And as was mentioned in Tapioca Weasel there, you have 48 states which do exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have 2 states which some people would say should happen in all 50.
Yeah.
Where in Nebraska has 5 electoral votes. Of those 5, 3 of them go to the state's popular vote winner.
Mm-hmm.
Or 2 of them, sorry. 2 of them go to the state's popular vote winner. And then you have 3 districts.
Mm-hmm.
You have Omaha, which is the state's largest city, like Douglas County and stuff like that, is Nebraska 2, which is the one that Barack Obama won in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 electoral vote from Nebraska went to Barack Obama in 2008. And then you have Nebraska's 1st district, which is like Lincoln and kind of goes up the northeast side of Nebraska. And then you have the 3rd district, which is basically all of western Nebraska from there's like a line almost from like where 402 goes into 308. And so you actually have 2 votes that go to the Electoral College. And then you can separate those 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually possible to get like 2 of 3 and still lose.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's say that if Western Nebraska and Lincoln end up giving, okay, well, we got 2 here, but then Omaha goes red,
mm-hmm.
and it has more people people voted than all them.
Right.
Well, now you have 3 that go to like the Republican at that point,
mm-hmm.
and then 2 of them that would go to the Democrat.
Hmm.
But it's still more representative
Yeah.
than what you see with others. You actually see Maine up there on the top right. If you don't know where Maine is, it's like me, where they actually did that in 2016. They actually sent their state's electoral votes, but Hillary Clinton ended up getting one of their electoral votes, and that's really cool that can happen. And some folks say that all states should do this because it seems like it's more representative.
Yeah.
Like, as I mentioned, like in Michigan or like in Texas,
yeah.
or famously in Florida. Yes. So what we also get here is if you pull up the other map. So what we have is that the vast majority of the nation's population lives. Then I realized, yeah, I'm from there. I also know about the unicameral legislature, and I just like really study this stuff.
He does.
The vast majority of the United States population lives within 100 miles of the ocean or the border.
Right. And
this is how you can tell. If you look at this map, this is a fair. All the counties are listed here, every single one of them. This is a fair representation of what it looks like population. I've seen other graphs as well where it's like it's where you have like cubes that go straight up. I've also seen the one where it has in Wyoming where there is like one little person, and toward you see the representation here is like for this many electoral votes. Yeah. And then in California it's so much different. And then you can see here that you have what looks like on the other map all of this red.
Yeah.
You go from like Idaho and over to Montana and Wyoming, over to North and South Dakota, go down to Nebraska, into Kansas and Oklahoma, and those places. And even in places like South Carolina and around there. But what you see there is, as you mentioned earlier, there are no people.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or also Alaska, where there's Anchorage.
Yeah.
And then
which I guess is
Fairbanks. Yeah, Anchorage is a large one there. And then Fairbanks and a couple of other cities that I don't remember. Juneau's actually on the bottom right, a little blue dot right there.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And so with Juneau being there, there's actually blue, and you can actually see in some places there where you have like more of an indigenous population, you have more Democratic votes.
Yeah.
Now it's not enough to get past Anchorage's population voters.
Right.
And that's part of an issue. But what you can see is all of these states right here, actually, all of those votes, 3 and 4 and 5 votes, even though their population is so much lower, actually, they get like 1,000 people vote. And you have 501.
Yeah.
They all go to the Republican on the right. Right. And so that ends up, even though you have very few voters, because as you can see, the population, look at California by itself.
Yeah.
Look at, you can also see where like Oregon and Washington are. You can see the ones in...
That's got to be Houston.
It is. Houston's the third most populated county in the country. Over on Los Angeles County is the first, the most populated, and then Cook County in Illinois, which is where Chicago is number 2. By the way, Chicago, really fucking densely populated. Oh, yeah. It's, I think it's 900 and something square miles, Cook County. And there are just over 5 million people there.
Jesus.
Los Angeles County is over 2 or 3,000 square miles, and so you're talking about an incredible
the population density.
And so what you can see there is that the vast majority of people live on these coastlines, and yet how did Donald Trump win? If this is the case, then it looks like blue people voted more.
Yeah,
they did. First off, it's because like this happened 5 times. There's an argument that is made that, and I actually have to pull up the note for this because the numbers are important. There's an argument made that this actually, at this point, especially, but not from Chicago, that this actually favors the small states, which are the small, in this case, Republican states, especially those that are in the the not so densely populated ones that are in the Midwest, as well as down in the South. And what we end up getting here, and I actually did this math, and I'm certain that somebody else has as well, because there's no way I'm the first person to ever do these things. In the what you have in the population of California is right at 40 million. They have 55 electoral votes,
right? Which
seems like proper representation, especially when you consider 3 from Wyoming. Right? It seems like when you look at the number that it is more. If you take the 22 least populated states add up to 41 million as of the census of 2010.
And they've got, how many electoral votes do they have?
101.
Yeah.
So, but not all of those are Republican states. You have states like Nevada, Connecticut, New Mexico, Hawaii, New Hampshire, Maine, Rhode Island, Delaware, the District of Columbia, and Vermont, all of which are, outside of like New Hampshire, reliably blue.
Yeah.
Okay, and you talk about 6, 7, 5, 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, where you have actually like a fair mix there. Okay, well maybe it's not so bad. But then we look at the 12 least populated Republican states that are reliably red. These states are, in order of population, Utah, Iowa, Arkansas, Mississippi, Kansas, Nebraska, Idaho, West Virginia, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, Alaska, Wyoming, which is 567,000. That adds up to 25 million people. To remember here is that California has 40 million.
Yeah.
They have 55 electoral votes. These states, these 12 states, have 25 million people and 59 electoral votes.
That hardly seems fair.
Not only is it not, it doesn't seem fair for the Electoral College, but it's even less fair for the Senate.
Yeah.
Because how can I say that there are 2 senators representing 567,000 people that have equal representation as the 2 senators from California, Kamala Harris and Dianne Feinstein, that represent 40 million?
Yeah.
Which means if you split that in half, it's even worse.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about under 300 million, or 300,000,
right?
Then 250, under 100. It's not very many for Wyoming, and it's 20 million.
Yeah.
This is the Senate is actually worse at this point than the Electoral College, based upon because this is again. If you think back to what we mentioned earlier, when we actually get into how the slave states won this is a lot like that.
Yeah.
because this is not proper representation for either the Senate or, in this case, where we talk about this, the election coming up, which most people think that the most important part of this election is the presidency. I would argue it's not, because the president can't do a damn thing without the Senate, as we found out after 2012, whenever the Senate went over to Republican control. Barack Obama passed exactly 0 pieces, was able to sign 0 pieces of legislation, when in fact they put into the House of Representatives the United States Congress 25 times the minimum wage rise, the rise in minimum wage 25 different times, and they went ahead and they blocked it all 25 times.
Yep.
Right. And of course, by the way, that affects these 12 most least populated states. Right. The numbers of by the way, population with representation it's even more. It's not fun to do that math if you are not necessarily a Republican or a Democrat, a conservative or a liberal, anything like that, but rather if you are a person who believes that the Constitution and that the United States of America should have proper representation. It is not fun to do that. Mm-hmm. This same thing happened because if we look at the necessity of voting, and this is what, if you have not already voted, implore you to do. Yeah. There are folks who'd say we need to go, and there are actually states that are implementing this. Mm-hmm. We're going to go to national popular vote.
Oh yeah.
There are states that are currently implementing this.
Yeah.
That say
who was it that did it recently?
I don't know if California did, but there's like 17 different states.
So.
You have to get to a certain number of states before it doesn't matter. You don't have to actually amend the Constitution.
Yeah.
Which is a really, really great way of subverting the possibility. Like, because you have to get in order to do that, you have to get the number of states have to be 37, I think. Mm-hmm. And then you also have to have, as we found out with the Equal Rights Amendment, basically a supermajority in Congress.
Yeah.
In the Senate, which not going to get. But what we see.
Are we still using this?
No, it's fine. You don't have to. What we see, or I really, I wish I had asked you to pull something else, but I
can.
No, I don't remember what the website is. I have it saved on my bookmarks. Back in 2014, mm-hmm. It's a midterm election. There were seats in the U.S. House of Representatives every 2 years. There were also seats in Congress. Congress, but the Senate, which is every 6 years. When we talk about low voter turnout, we talk about something like California. What is the consensus in California by Republicans? It is, why would I vote? Colorado may have already, I think Colorado did, with national popular vote.
Yeah.
Where they give their electoral votes to whoever wins the popular vote. Mm-hmm. And Republicans aren't big fans of this because Republicans have actually lost the popular vote in every election since 1992.
Yeah.
Except for 2004, and yet you find out that you're looking at three presidencies.
Yeah.
If you are a Republican in California, there's this believing a lie, mm-hmm. where you convince people for long enough that their votes don't count, and they start to think, why would I vote? Mm-hmm. Because no matter what I do, I'm not going to influence this election.
They did the same thing to Democrats in Texas.
Mm-hmm. For a long time.
Yeah.
Texas had first off was last, and this is insane to think of. Last in voting, registered voters. Texas.
With 38 electoral votes.
It's the second most populated state in the country, the fastest rising population for the longest time.
Yeah.
In low voter turnout. And when I say low voter turnout, I mean that in 2014, 28% of eligible voters in Texas gave us John Cornyn. You know, the racist who has voted, if you're not in favor of Donald Trump, just to consider this, John Cornyn, the racist who has voted with Donald Trump and his administration over 98% of the time.
Yeah.
Who has defended this person adamantly in with the impeachment and everything else that they have done, and not calling out anything and running away from reporters. 28% of Texans in 2014 elected this person. 28%.
They also Greg Abbott too.
Yes.
Because Wendy Davis was going up against Greg Abbott, and
this is your representation in the
Wendy Davis,
and what some people consider the most important House and State and Senate, State House and State Senate in the country. It's been under Republican control for, oh my gosh, a long time. This is redistricting. After the 2020 election, that we redistrict all of Texas, all of 150 Texas House, whatever, all the districts. Yes, this makes me so flustered that I can't even. And 28% of people in 2014 would have said, this is how we're going to redistrict everything. Because if I'm a Democrat in Texas, or a Republican, or no, the Democrat in Texas, my vote doesn't fucking count.
Yeah.
As if there are not mayoral, city council, state house, and state senate elections.
And the problem with that is that even if somebody were to tell a Republican in Texas, like, oh no, it's fine, it's reliable, it doesn't matter if you show up, they're still going to show up.
Yes,
Republicans show up to the fucking polls.
Yes, especially in Texas, and where you have over 50 conservatives vote far more than 18 to 24-year-olds. This is a fact.
Hey, Mikey.
In 2016, Hillary Clinton won the national popular vote by 3 million. She lost by a lot. Yeah. And Americans were not okay with this, which is just hilarious.
That it took this for people to realize.
Because y'all motherfuckers didn't vote.
Yeah.
Like
that. Yeah, that too.
You can go march in the streets in a women's march when half y'all motherfuckers didn't even vote. I get it. Be mad. Be part of the resistance. All that stuff. I get that. I am. Woman's place is in the resistance. But you are fucking responsible.
Yeah, on this week's Scathing Atheist, No Illusions played the diatribe that he done. He's never repeated a diatribe, but he did it this week. He played back the diatribe from the 2016 after election day. And I got a little emotional listening to it, because it was like, he's like, look, everybody is responsible for this. Now there's different degrees of responsible. There's the people who are like, oh, I should have driven so and so to the polls. I should have done more lit drops. They're less responsible. But then there's the people who are like, I don't see a point. It's not going to matter. It doesn't matter overall. The two-party system is broken. Yeah. And it's like,
there is a case to be made for voting for a third party, but it's not currently a thing that we can consider.
No, and especially not in national elections.
So those of you that did not vote are responsible for Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. Which means that responsibility, it doesn't mean that you can't fix it.
Yep.
And that is actually something where I'm proud of you. And I'm proud of us. Because the percentage of, and by the way, 24% of eligible voters voted for Donald Trump. 24% of eligible voters. Yes, I heard that. 24%. There's no reason that that should be the case.
Yeah.
We realized that.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved into 2018. And I worked on a Senate campaign in Texas for Beto O'Rourke, who I actually, and I'm serious about this, who I think has been the most important person in our country for the past at least 2 years. Hey, Randy. And I was in Tarrant County, Texas, which is home to Fort Worth, which is the last Republican metropolitan stronghold in the country. Mm-hmm. And we increased voter turnout in Texas for a midterm by an incredible amount.
Yeah. Enough of an amount to actually have made a difference.
Ted Cruz,
in that place.
Ted Cruz, 6 years prior, won Texas in the Senate by, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, we flipped Tarrant County blue. We made it blue for the first time since 1992.
Yep.
Came within 2 points of winning Texas. In up and down in states, and this is again something that is in this thing, that's the script that I've already written. I hope to have it out before Tuesday, because y'all motherfuckers need to go vote if you haven't already on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Or go drop your ballots off, whatever. The percentage increase in voters just in the midterm election, which is still not enough, right? Midterms are important because look at the Senate. And a midterm election increased across the board.
Yeah.
More than 10%. In some states, it almost doubled in midterm elections. What happened? Not sure. Democrats took back the House, right? But what happened? We saw more competitive races across the country.
Yeah.
Look at it now. In 2020.
Even more so.
We have competitive races in states that Republicans have said are safe.
Yeah.
Every single year before now. South Carolina, Georgia, Texas, where it's not only in play for the Senate, but Texas is in play for the fucking presidency.
Yeah.
But not only that, we're also competitive in Michigan, which is a fairly safe blue state. More people voting is better.
Yeah.
You're talking about up and down. The reason that it's better is because you have not only more proper representation based upon your actual party, but it shows that every single vote counts. And again, this is something I'm getting into in this video with ranked choice voting, but still. But it also...
Getting into this video?
No.
Okay, I was just so like...
No, we have to go. But what happens there is that you have, and when you force this to happen, you cannot have somebody like Lindsey Graham in South Carolina just say socialism and extreme left or anything like that, because you can't pander to people.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Jamie Harrison, when he's there, I like him a lot because he's not pandering to people. When you are in the South as a Republican right now, because you have disenfranchised voters, because you have voter suppression, yes, we should fucking address that. But what you have are people who just say God, guns, Jesus, beer, and Bible, and they get elected. For what? They didn't say anything. It's the same thing right now where you talk about, hey, Donald Trump, what's your plan for the next 4 years? Oh, maybe you should have that. And so you can't just, when you have this, when you have a more informed voter base, a more informed electorate, which is on what I'm getting into in the actual video that I'm making with this, you have more people turn out to vote, higher voter diversity, and you also have more competitive races.
Yeah.
And that means that you can't just go in and say whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
But it also puts people in place that represent the state, represent the district, represent the county.
Yeah, the actual population.
Exactly. And what it also does is it helps you to see that your vote counts. Mm-hmm. And in 1 minute here, I'm going to finish this because we have to go. Is this: if you don't think that your vote counts, on the video I've already clipped these things. I have a myriad of people who lost their race by 1 point, one vote. Not necessarily the Senate, not the House, But you'll see how consequential it is. But in 2000, and I've gone over this a lot, in 2000, the race came down between Vice President Al Gore and former Texas Governor George W. Bush. It came down to 3 states.
Mm-hmm.
But it really came down to 1 state. Oregon went blue. I forget the other state. I don't remember. But also you have higher voter turnout, whatever people, And in Florida in 2000, we had a recount, especially in Miami-Dade County. And there were a lot of issues with this recount. But when the Supreme Court decided it, it came down to 1 county for the election in 2000. And George W. Bush became president by 537 votes.
See, I thought that's why it was called 538.
It's kind of funny that would be the case.
It's a poetic thing.
Yeah. But 537 votes. If you think your vote doesn't count,
yeah.
What if you were one of the 538? Think of the early 2000s and think of what happened in the late 2000s. Think of the violence and the terrorism.
Yeah.
Not just beginning in 2000, but with the USS Cole, or 2001, but USS Cole in 2000.
Oh, yeah.
And then think to all of the people that we lost in the Middle East.
Yeah.
In the mid 2000s, think of the recession toward the end of 2000, the end of the decade. Did we need that? Objectively, how many people could have voted? Our electoral system is not perfect. And yes, it does appear to favor those states which have lower population, which right now are, because of Southern strategy, yes, they appear to be strictly Republican states. They don't have to be. We have already surpassed, and almost every single state, especially the red ones, surpassed not just early voting in 2016. No, he became president. I get the 5-4, but there were only 537 votes. It would not have fucking mattered if 538 people have voted. 538. I get the fact the Supreme Court said that shit, but it didn't have to go there.
Yeah, it did not have to go there.
Yeah, it doesn't have to go there this year. And that's why in Texas, an early voting already surpassed 9 million votes, which is more than they voted in all of 2016.
Yeah.
Georgia has done the same. Arizona, Pennsylvania is getting there. Michigan, Minnesota, all of these states are doing that. That does not mean that Democrats are going to win all of these states. It doesn't mean Republicans are going to win all these states, but it matters that you go and vote.
Mm-hmm.
Because why would you want to go and not have a competitive race and then go and say, hey, well, I couldn't do anything, when we know you could have.
Yeah.
And you know you could have. And that's not the point of this video. I went into the overview of the history of this, and I hope that it helped a lot. But in the point of this is that we didn't have to have 5 times where the winner of the popular vote lost the election, and twice since 2000. We didn't have to have that, and we don't have to have it again.
Right.
There's no reason for it. On Tuesday, we're going to be on air live at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time
For a very long time.
Until Wednesday at around noon or 1. Somewhere around there.
I might not be on.
And that's okay. But we're going to be going into this. And we expect to see incredible amounts of voter turnout, more than 2008.
Yep.
But if you are sick of the past 4 years and you need something, you say you need something else, or if you're one of the people that are in some of those maybe Senate seats, Senate places, Georgia, where you have 2 of them, Arizona, right? Texas, where Iowa, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tom Tillis and Cal Cunningham, which is great, TTDCC, and you have all of this. Or if you are a conservative or Republican who is in favor of what has happened and you want to have more people on the Supreme Court, or maybe replace Justice Clarence Thomas with somebody else who is even further conservative, further right. Maybe you want this. Maybe you want this more because you actually want to see these things happen. Why wouldn't you, especially if you're in those battleground tipping point states of Pennsylvania and Michigan?
Why would you not?
Why would you not? Because it matters.
Yeah.
I don't care who you vote for. I certainly don't agree with you if you vote for Donald Trump. And I have very reserved type of trust in you. But why wouldn't you go vote? Our system, I get it. I think it should change.
Mm-hmm.
But with this current system we have, voting does matter.
Mm-hmm.
We have the opportunity to actually employ these people and employ them properly. We also can say to them, you're fired.
Yep. That'll be nice.
And why wouldn't we? If they're not doing their jobs, if they're sitting in the Senate with over 500 bills that passed out as representatives and they won't even bring them to the floor, why would we keep any of them there?
Right.
Thank you for voting, Tapioca Weasel, and the rest of you have. We certainly did. We saw that our ballots were accepted.
Yes.
You can track them in your state. Go and do that. If you have already voted, if you haven't voted, don't vote by mail.
Yeah, drop that shit off.
Go take it to your You can do it on election day. You can take it and give it to them.
Yep, you can.
Go and Inquisitive Quandary voted today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, IQ.
Go and ask other people, when did you vote? I did that.
He did. He sent a bunch of text messages out.
I sent one to my boss. And I was like, yo, I got a non-work related question. Have you voted yet?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not something that's to be ashamed of. It's not something to be embarrassed of. Did you vote? Yeah. Right? Do you like Roe v. Wade? Okay. Why haven't you voted?
Yeah.
Like, did you vote? Make the plan to vote safely, socially distanced, wear a mask. You cannot wear, in most states, political gear.
Just don't do it.
You make the plan to vote. Make not only your plan to vote, but who are you voting for up and down the ballot. You don't have to do straight ticket stuff, right? You don't have to. We didn't I know I didn't vote for more than one proposition in Tarrant County, Texas.
Yeah, same.
In person straight ballot. However you want to, make the plan to vote. Ask other people. You go to iwillvote.org, right?
Mm-hmm. Or justfuckingvote.com.
Yeah, or there's the one that's made by the strippers, right?
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
It's great.
Right? A drop off, even though I'm in Colorado, because you can't. We don't have them.
Yeah, we do.
Where you can go and do that. Where you can, I promise. I've seen it happen. We got within 2 points in Texas.
Yeah.
In 2018. We flipped Tarrant County. I also did this where over 60% of the state's population of 26 million live in the 11 most populated counties in Texas. Mm-hmm. There are 254. It is necessary to go and vote because you are part of that. You're part of the system. Why don't you make the system work for you?
It's beautiful.
We have to go.
Yeah, we have to go. We have to go very, very badly because I have a hair appointment. But I wanted to give you sufficient time to say everything.
And
didn't want to cut you off.
Because when we get here on Tuesday, Eastern time zone for Indiana and Kentucky are already going to be closed.
Yeah.
You'll have 30 minutes to go vote in the rest of those basically Eastern time zone states. Mm-hmm. You'll have a couple of hours in Texas, especially if you're in El Paso, right? In El Paso, I just saw this glitch, and we don't want that to happen. So go and vote before then, and take people to vote.
Yes.
Make sure. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Everybody.
Yep.
We'll see you Tuesday at 3:30 Pacific time. Bring your alcohol, because no matter what, you're gonna need it. Also, take your Xanax or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's stressful no matter what.
Yeah, it really is.
So
we'll figure it out, though.
Yeah, we will.